When I'm walking down the street.
I do want to say to Doni and many of you in this room that over a very long career in this city, all of you have helped me and my colleagues tell the truth and to try to tell.
I may not look like you and you me, but
my head up.
I'm from South Carolina, so I just.
What does this event mean to you, Miss Peggy Moore?
Oh, my heart.
Happy 20th anniversary.
My heart is about loving up on my sisters. Do you know what it feels like to have your sisters in the room? John.
And that'll be different and unique. I'm gonna be the best me I can be by letting His glory shine through. I am beautiful, I am blessed, but not just what you see in the flesh. I'm free from people, free from myself.
The doctor lived next door to the janitor, to the reverend, and the lawyer. We were together. Now we get so high and mighty that you create stress for your society because you don't like poor black folks either. That's a health problem. Get yourself together so I can stop being taking care of geriatric people and get back to pediatrics. I thank you, Doni, for all you've done. Let's keep doing it all the more.
Letting His glory shine through. That'll be you, that'll be me, that'll be different and unique. I'm gonna be the best me I can be by letting His glory shine through. And I dare you, I dare you, I dare you to be you.
First name's Doni, last name's Glover, in it to win it for the long haul, baby. Okay, let's talk about some Black history. Today's the last day officially. Of course, we celebrate Black history all year long. So I'm going to put a question out there. I'm just going to pose it. Who do you celebrate for Black History Month? What comes to your mind? Bam. Let's pose the question. One of my favorites, I should say, is W.E.B. Du Bois. My daughter shares his birthday, February 23rd. Of course, he wrote a number of books, including Souls of Black Folks, Two Souls, Two Strivings, Two Warring Ideals, in One Dark Body, who dogged strength alone keeps them from being torn asunder. Woo, what a heck of a quote. When I think of Black history, I think of some of the historians, the early historians, like Martin Delaney, like J.A. Rogers. Do these names ring a bell for you? W.E.B. Du Bois was a historian. Of course, he came up with the Crisis magazine, and you should know that I love news publishing, publications, the recording of history, books. I'll tell you one book that you got to get in your library, and that's I Am Black Wall Street. Available on Barnes & Noble and Amazon. We go into the history of how those people in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where did the first ones come from? And this was long before O.W. Gurley made it to Tulsa. He has an interesting story, if you haven't seen it, Greenwood Rising. It's streaming on your television, Greenwood Rising. But the first people who went to who went to Oklahoma came out of Florida under the leadership of Chief John Horse. Now, you want to learn a story about Black history, learn about Chief John Horse. He has a fascinating story. I've never heard one so magnanimous, so daring, so bold. I guess besides those people who came across the Atlantic initially, and we were not in the bottom of a slave ship. Let's just get that off the table. We were in the Americas long before a god doggone slave ship. And that's a lot of people to put in the bottom. Have you counted how many black people there are? There are over 100 million black people in Brazil, 40 million in the US. Unmute yourself there, big brother. Oh, okay, you finishing up? I'll wait for you a second. Give me the thumbs up. We're going to be joined by historian extraordinaire Clarence Tiger Davis, former delegate straight out of East Baltimore. How you doing there, big brother?
Hey, pretty good, Donnie. How you doing, my brother?
Man, I was just about to go, just sharing how we did not first come to these Americas in the bottom of a slave ship.
Right.
I don't know how deeply you have researched it. You've taught me so much of what I have learned as it relates to the role of veterans and soldiers.
Right. You know, we came in many different ways, okay? And it wasn't always the slave ship thing. You know, some of us came here as indentured servants or what have you.
No, I mean,
bottom line is that, and I keep, you know, I was up in Harford County yesterday for a civil rights thing at Harford Community College. And we were discussing the folk who came to Aberdeen via the military, and they stayed there. And many of them who came there became involved in that Route 40 campaign. You're probably too young to remember, in 1962, 63, all the African diplomats was coming up and down Route 40. That was the main thoroughfare back then. And they could not get service. And Ideal Donna in Aberdeen became the site of massive national demonstrations to break down the barriers on segregation and eating restaurants or what have you on Route 40. The president got involved, Kennedy, everybody got involved in it because all these African nations were getting their independence from the late 50s on. And when that diplomats was traveling from the United Nations down to DC or what have you, or that diplomats, you know, became a great national embarrassment for the United States when these people couldn't get served. And some of the people who stood on the front lines there, one of them was Bertha Copeland. She's 95 years of age. She's still alive. She and some of the other folk who had come to that area as military wives or military personnel, they stood on that front line and broke down those barriers. And the Ideal Donna is still there. But the folk there, you know, paid a heavy price to break down those barriers. And I was real proud of them. And, you know, I had a chance to talk about it yesterday. And we had a good little session yesterday evening up there at Harford Community College. But the one interesting thing that we brought to the forefront was most of those people who participated in those demonstrations, they were like the grandchildren of slaves. You know, when my great grandmother, whom we referred to as the last slave in my family, she died around 1954. And I'm the third generation born out of slavery. Well, a lot of these people who participated in those demonstrations up there in Route 40 were grandchildren of former slaves. You know, and see, some of our people, like my granddaughter, I take her to see the tombstone. She said, Pop, I thought you said Grandma Flora took care of you. I said, she did. Nah, Pop, she was a slave. I said, baby, it was just yesterday. You know? And so somehow we lose concept. We have to give up a little content with a lot of our discussions when we're talking about our struggles here in America, what have you.
So let me just jump in there, Delegate. In my research, and thank you for your help with my second book, I Am Black Wall Street. But in my research, I found that the oldest bones found in the Americas were of a Black woman in Brazil. When they did the DNA testing, it went back 12 to 14,000 years. We have 100 million Blacks in Brazil. That's the largest population of Blacks outside of Africa. The U.S. has a mere 40 million. So 100 million in Brazil, 40 million of us here in the U.S. And what I pose to you today, and of course we want to hear about James Fortin and the other stories you have told me about, but we are a diaspora. We are global. There are Blacks all over the world.
That's correct.
Including the 800 years that the Black Moors, the Blackamoors, the Moors dominated, educated, civilized Europe, beginning in Spain and Portugal.
Absolutely. Salamanca and all of those universities, man, were founded by Black people. But, even here in America, our folks my ancestors will tell you that a Black man invented the cotton gin. Well, chances are it's true. We can't document it and prove it because they give Eli Whitney, the credit for it, right? But chances are, just like with Thomas Edison and Alexander Graham Bell, behind the scenes, there were Black people who were 5th, 6th grade education, but they were geniuses who were putting forth the necessary scientific data or information to move forward in that technology.
I got to jump in. Over there in East Baltimore, you had Vivian Thomas.
Yes, indeed.
Something the Lord made. David Blaylock, the physician at Hopkins. Vivian Thomas was training Hopkins doctors.
That's correct. See, part of the problem we have is that we're always forced to view the world through the prism of the conqueror. And too many of our leaders end up parroting what they hear white folks say, about our problem or whatever. Our problem always been white folks trying to keep their foot on our back. It ain't never had nothing to do with our intellect or what have you, because they stole all of our ingenuity.
So let's get this straight.
Our ingenuity that enable America to prosper, man.
So let's clarify that, because going back to D.W. Griffith's The Birth of a Nation, there was this prototype, which has become a stereotype, the prototype that Blacks were inferior, that we were scared of our own shadows, that we had big eyes and big lips, and we ate watermelon like white people don't eat watermelon.
Right.
There was all of these stereotypes that have been perpetuated to this day. When the fact is, they didn't steal slaves, they stole scientists, doctors, lawyers, physicians, judges. We didn't come here without skills.
That's correct. And once again, I don't care how you look at it. If you look at it from the scientific perspective, from Benjamin Banneker to George Washington Carver, and in between all of the great scientists and engineers, whether you're talking about the stoplight or any of these kind of inventions, they all come from the ingenuity of people of African heritage. Our problem has been that, our leadership always placating and seeking to be validated by white people tend to parrot the white lie. Okay. And so we never come to realize that we built America. I don't care how you look at it. We built them. No other group. I don't care what you're talking about, the English, the Germans, the French. No other group has contributed as much to building America as African people. If you're talking about the military and defense, more than 9,000 blacks fought in the Revolutionary War on the part of the Americans.
Now, this is before the Civil War. I want to just get it in people's mind. Before the Civil War, the Revolutionary War.
And check this out now. Next year,
take me to Rhode Island.
Next year is the 250th anniversary.
So you got to take me to Rhode Island.
And we need to begin to talk about that over the next year, about all of the blacks who helped bring about this nation, whether we're talking about it militarily or otherwise, whether we're talking about the Prince Hall Masons and all. But we need to talk about it beginning next year. But that's the military. If you're talking about STEM, just like I said, science and technology, we brought that here. If you're talking about culture, I mean, who impacted our culture? Where did country and Western music come from? Where did Fred Astaire learn all his moves? I don't care what you're looking at in the culture out here. It all came from black people, even if you're talking about cooking. Because white folks didn't do no cooking. It was us.
You mentioned music. I gotta throw in. I gotta throw in. We gonna share this mic. I know you get as excited as I do.
I get pumped up, man.
You gotta let me get a word in. Sister Rosetta Thorpe. She was the mother of rock and roll. I just had to get that in.
All right, very good. But then now look, when you get beyond that, if you're talking about democracy, it wouldn't be a democracy without black people fighting for everybody to have equal rights. And then some of them come here and enjoy affirmative action and stuff, and they get on their feet, then they turn around and want to dog us out. You know, and see, this is why one of the reasons we have to continually push the issue of reparations. That's the only way for us to go is reparations, because all this affirmative action ain't about nothing. Look, in 1940, the population of America was 89.8% white, 9.8% black. Okay, that left only 0.4 of 1% for everybody else, and they was put into a category called other. That's the Native American, the Latinos, Asians, Eskimos, Pacific Islanders, 0.4 of 1%. See, the nation has always been black and white up to until we get close to the 1970s. It was all black and white. And so it was always white people oppressing, burning down our towns, destroying our businesses, and disrupting our community, man, you know, to keep us in what they viewed as our place.
I heard something. I learned something recently, which said that before the 1600s, there was no such thing as white people. That white people is an American construct, because it was back then. It was about the rich, you know, your Lord Calverts, your Lord Baltimores, the rich people who realized they were outnumbered if they didn't add in the everyday white people. Prior to that, you were French, you were Spanish, you were English, but they found in America, because they were outnumbered by the indigenous peoples, they came up with the concept of whiteness.
Well, there's no question about some of what you're saying, because they had to change laws whereby children will take the status of the mother as opposed to the father, because these white fathers were fathering all the children, and everybody know that children had carried the status of the father, right? But they changed all of that around.
Why?
Because black women were having all these children by white men. And therefore, if they took the status of the father, that meant they was free. And the only way they could keep them enslaved is that they had to change the law whereby the child take the status of the mother. You see, so the impact of African people in America has been a great catalyst for changing the entire European culture that was brought. But getting back to looking at our culture, I mean, let's just take a little brief look at Dunbar High School.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because, man, I just want to put this in there. When I left Poly and went to Dunbar, one of my friends say, "Oh, you going to Dunbar?" Tell them what Dunbar did. Matter of fact, nobody from Poly got a museum named after them. Not in this city.
Well, let's talk about some other things. Okay, Reginald Francis Lewis became the first black billionaire, and you notice I got on his Reginald F. Lewis Museum, right? Now,
they got a film coming up about him down there.
You can look at people like take art, for instance. Professor Lewis at Morgan. The statue of Frederick Douglass. The statue of the black soldier downtown. Professor Lewis built that museum at Morgan. He built the art department. But look at him. 1943, he graduates from Dunbar. He ends up in the Marine Corps. He cannot go to an art school here, so he had to go up to Philadelphia. Dr. Jenkins lures him back into Morgan, and he stayed at Morgan the rest of his life. Once he got there, he stayed there. And then on all of his trips to Africa, he began to bring back artifacts to build the museum there at Morgan. That's Professor Lewis. Okay, now that's one area. But then what about little guys like James Norfleet? James Norfleet graduates in 1958, inspired to go to pharmaceutical school. He goes to University of Maryland School of Pharmacy. The racism is so thick you can cut it with a knife, and the cost was astronomical for a young guy coming out of East Baltimore. He goes into the Army like his brothers did. He comes out, the GI Bill is passed. He goes to Morgan, and he graduates in 1967. He's hired by Colgate-Palmolive Oral Division, right? Now, when he retires in 2006, he will be in charge of all the scientists worldwide for Colgate-Palmolive Oral Division. You'll know him by his first couple of major patents. One is Peroxyl, and the other one is Ultra Bright toothpaste. That's one of our boys from Dunbar now, right? When he died, his project was called Total. And you see that all over Colgate right now, Total. Jim died last year, man. And, he has never really fully been recognized for what he has done. He has set up scholarships for dental school all over this country, man. Jim was a great scientist. Like I said, he got that bachelor's degree.
His whole name?
Jim Norfleet, Norflett. Jim Norfleet. Now, or you can look at people like Bobby Young. Bobby Young was one of the first black doctors. I think he graduated from Dunbar in 1957, played football. And Morgan's one of Morgan's all-time great football players. But he was one of the great doctors who came out of Dunbar High School as well. Okay, but then, go back, look, Lois Young, Dr. Ralph Young's daughter. Lois Young was the first black female to graduate from University of Maryland Medical School. And what's the lady's name? Graduated the first graduate of the School of Nursing come out of Dunbar High School. I mean, Dunbar High School has produced some great students. who've gone on to do great things. I mean, we look at the guys like Judge Bell, who graduated from Harvard. Okay, fine. But Judge Bell is just one of many.
Esther McCready. Esther
McCready. That's right. Esther McCready. She was the first to graduate from nursing school at University of Maryland. I mean, Dunbar has had a lot of firsts. We were always on the cutting edge of history, but everybody wants to talk about Thurgood Marshall or Perry Mitchell or Douglas High School. But because Dunbar was in East Baltimore, people did not view Dunbar in that way. They'd rather say, well, they got Muggsy Bogues and Reggie Williams and Reggie Lewis, all the basketball players, football players. Hey, man, we were much more than that. I mean, if you look at Morgan, Haywood Harrison, one of the great educators at Morgan, he was vice president for academic affairs. Dunbar, I think it was class of 49. But then following him, Clara Adams became the vice president of academic affairs. Clara Adams from the 1800 block of Federal Street. She reportedly never made less than an A in any subject, from kindergarten on up. I find that hard to believe because I never saw her as being that kind of athlete who could pass gym with flying colors. But they must have they must have gave her a grade based on her ingenuity. You know what I mean? Because certainly she wasn't an athlete. But you look at all of those people. The library at Morgan was built by Professor Fisher, who was another one of Dunbar's grads. But, we've always had these great graduates, of Dunbar High School, but their story has never really been told.
Tell me about the role of the Black soldier in American history. What happens when the Black soldier is liberated after each war? And we gotta go back to, you didn't plug the 1st Rhode Island Regiment.
Yeah, the Rhode Island Regiment, but then what about those guys in New Jersey, man? We have Black soldiers. You're talking about 9,000. And most of those 9,000 will fight in basically all African units or what have you, even though they were integrated throughout. Most of them fought in purely African units. And they met British mercenaries head on and defeated them. When I say mercenary, I'm talking about professional soldiers that Great Britain had hired. They call them Hessians, to come here to help put down the rebellion. Black soldiers met them head on and defeated them at every turn, because Black soldiers believed they were fighting for freedom, and they were fighting for a good cause, which was supposed to be the promise of America. But that promise was never fully realized. And part of the reason it was never fully realized was that after every war, they disarm us and try to send us back to a pre-war status. But I don't care. Let's take a look at our fathers, because that's a story we need to tell right now. Because this year is the 80th anniversary. We just finishing the 80th anniversary of the ending of World War II. How did Black soldiers impact the social climate in America? Well, if you look at it, the hierarchy in our society came to understand that it would not be business as usual after World War II ended. And because you got these incidents like Townsville, Australia, Black soldiers mutiny because they would not accept second-class status, or they refused to accept the discrimination by white officers. They armed themselves and they shot up the officers' quarters. And the Australian police and Australian military had to come in to put down the rebellion, because they would not dare send any American troops in there to deal with those Black soldiers, okay? So it was the Australian police and military that put down the rebellion. Even groups like the Tuskegee Airmen, the more educated group, at Freeman Field in Indiana. They mutiny and rebel against the discrimination that they faced there. The same with Port Chicago. That was actually in Oakland, California, where they were loading the ships, and eventually the white supervisors did not heed the warnings of the blacks, and the whole damn place blew up. And the blacks, of course, decided that, hey, we ain't going to do it no more. And they stood their ground and refused to work. They court-martialed all of them. Now, we're just now getting a lot of this stuff cleared up. Or up in Seattle, Washington, at Fort Lawton, where, black soldiers were treated in a disparaging manner, while POWs, Italian POWs, were treated with great honor and respect. Black soldiers rebelled. The hierarchy of this country knew that, hey, this black man ain't going to be the same black man after the war. And so this is how you end up getting things changed in society. Okay.
Because of the black soldier.
Yeah. Thurgood Marshall and Martin Luther King, they did their job. But the foundation was laid by those black soldiers and people like A. Philip Randolph. A. Philip Randolph, and they toward the end of the war formed what was called the Committee to End Jim Crow in the Armed Forces, right? And he followed, that was his initiative that followed his threat in 1941 to have a march on Washington, which led to the integration of the military. Not integration, but it led to, Tuskegee Airmen and Montford Point Marines. It led to the FEPC, Fair Employment Practice Commission, and all that. But they write A. Philip Randolph out of history, man. And so his committee to end Jim Crow and the armed forces, had a significant impact to the extent that in 1948, Harry S. Truman signed Executive Order 9981, which effectively desegregated the military, which laid, once again, the foundation for Brown versus Board of Education. But the military, our society or our people would rather give credit to Thurgood Marshall and Martin Luther King and all of that. And now that's fine. But understand, it was the fear of what would happen if they did not that brought about the change in America.
Now, just like they play good cop, bad cop on us, we had our own version of good cop, bad cop. You can go with Dr. King and I Have a Dream, or you can deal with his wild cousin over there who just come back from Vietnam, Korea, the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, who has a proclivity to pop that on.
Yes. But now look, but look at the sacrifice they made. In 1944, Eisenhower needed troops to replenish some of his elite combat arms units, like the 82nd Airborne, or the 101st and all of that. So what did they do? They asked for Negro volunteers to go into those white units, right? More than 5,000 blacks volunteered. You can look it up. They will be called the 2221 Negro volunteers. Anybody that listened, write that down. 2221 Negro volunteers. They accept 2,221 of them to go into those white units. But to go into those white units, they had to give up their rank because they would not allow the blacks to go into those units and then supervise white boys. So the black soldiers had to give up their rank, but they did it for what? They did it for their people, to move America forward. And they have never been given their proper respect. Can you imagine it, man? Yeah, you are a sergeant and then you're going to become a PFC? You know, you
Tell
give
me
up
about
that
the.
rank and that money and stuff like that, man. It just didn't make any sense for that to happen, but it did happen that way. Okay.
How was the West won? Because we Americans, we grew up watching what was it, Roy Rogers, and we have no idea of the concept of cowboys and where it really came from. Who won the West? You know, I'm going into my book. Chief John Horse came out of Florida, who went on the Trail of Tears, took 200 black soldiers and their families from Florida to Oklahoma. Then they found that slavery was out there as well, including from the Indians. So they then left Oklahoma, went to Texas, creating 500 black towns along the way, all the way to Mexico, where he then became the border patrol for the Mexican government. What role did we play in taming the West?
Well, listen, we played a major role. Look, first of all, the history books will tell you that 1/3 of the cowboys were black. Okay, I mean, who else go ride a trail behind them shitty ass cows, stinking and carrying on, eating that dust? Hey, it was black folks that did that. 1/3, and most books will tell you that 1/3 of them on those trails, they were black cowboys. Okay. And then, you know, we won't even talk about the Buffalo Soldiers and or any of the military units, but just look at the people that was out there building towns. And then white folks get upset and then burn the towns down because black folks was living better than them, you know. So when you look at the West, and you know, nowadays they're beginning to put a little bit of us into the books or what have you, because we had a good relationship with the Native Americans and we were good ambassadors or what have you. But I don't care how you look at it, in any aspect of progress in this country, it was always African people who were in the forefront or played a significant role in bringing about that progress that we call America. And that's just the bottom line, man. But our people, once again, unless the white man validates it, they will not pay tribute to it or recognize it. Look, let me give you an example. Every Black History Month during my tour in the legislature, we established in 1986 what we call African American Patriots Day, because we wanted to tell the story of blacks in defending this country. And so every fourth Saturday of February, we would gather at the War Memorial Building and we would have a ceremony. Now, we started off with 25 people, then we ended up with about 500, after a few years. But what would happen now on that Friday before that Saturday, I would get on the floor of the House and make a presentation on what it was we were going to talk about, or pay homage to the next day, what units. Every time I stood up that Friday, you could hear the black folks mumbling. Oh man, there you go with that old black soldier stuff again. There you go again. They were sick and tired of hearing me. Okay. On this one occasion, we were discussing the
Why were they
760.
sick and tired? Why?
The 760.
Why?
Because the white man. That's what I'm getting ready to get to right now. Okay. And when I get up, some would even go to the lounge. Then on this one Friday, this white redneck, that's what he called himself, from Western Maryland, Doc McClellan, come walking to the front where I sat in the legislature, House of Delegates. He had tears streaming down his face. And all eyes focused on he and I as he walked towards me. Because I was talking about the 761st Tank Battalion. He said, Tiger, can I have the mic? I said, sure, Doc. And I gave Doc the mic. And he then began to say, well, it's about time somebody pay tribute to them boys. And then he tried to correct himself because he didn't want to offend us by saying boy. You know, he didn't know what to say, black, boy, whatever. He said, but look, Tiger, I was there. I never thought I was going to see home again. None of us did. We were in the snow over our head and death was coming in from the sky, the mortars, the Luftwaffe was bombing us or what have you. And then the 761st Tank Battalion, Black Panthers. Then he tried to correct himself by saying Black Panther, but that was their nickname. They broke through and liberated and saved one of our most elite units, the 101st Airborne. And as soon as he started talking about that, you know, giving them all those accolades and what they did, then all of a sudden,
the Negroes,
black folks started clapping because the white guy had validated our black history. That is where our problem is. Now, we're talking about black leadership.
So
now,
if the leadership is messed up, you know the everyday person.
Quality of our leadership, then what do you expect from the masses, okay? Or how do you expect white folk to respect our history if we don't respect it?
Well, let's put some history out there. Did the black soldiers play any role in the first black governor of the state of Maryland?
Hey, man, listen, if you want my opinion, we made the difference. Okay, look, here's what happened now, and you know, how it shakes out, you know, let the chips fall where they may. With about 6 weeks to go, Westmore was 6 points behind. Okay.
Peter Francho.
Huh? 6 points behind Francho. I was helping Peter Francho. Larry Gibson brought Westmore into our King David Lodge, Prince Hall Mason. Then Larry pulls me to the side. He says, Tiger, you got to get the black vets together for West. I said, wait a minute, man. Look, Peter Francho and I have been friends for 40 years, man. I've been working with him. He said, Tiger, but we got a chance now to win both the Attorney General with Anthony Brown and the governorship. We can do it all in one swoop. I thought about this was that Saturday. The next day, I sent Peter Francho a message that, hey, Peter, I got to go. I got to leave, man, you know, and because I've got to help West. And I then sent out a message to the veterans community. Over 100 veterans came on that call that Tuesday. This was Sunday. And we did a Zoom call. Over 100 veterans came on that call. And we began to discuss how we would go about it because we don't have time for organizing now. What we are talking about here is individual responsibility. We all belong to communities. We all belong to fraternities. We all belong to various social groups within our community, to include the church. Each of us must take the individual responsibility. Now, I had organized the black politics on the Eastern Shore in the late 60s and early 70s, the same with Harford County. So I called all those old black student union people, got all the troops together, and we pulled a massive campaign of individual responsibility over the last 5 to 6 weeks of that campaign. And Westmore came from 6 points behind to victory. Everybody in this campaign knew and understood what had gone down, and that it was the black vets and their associates that brought that victory home. Now, along the way, we had some luck. And here's luck. No sooner we joined the campaign, about 2 weeks later, the Elks were having their national, or not national, but their state convention out in Towson, where you got over 25 lodges coming together from all over the state. So I got Westmore on there to speak, and I spoke to them. And I had him taking pictures with all the ladies in the white. You know, that tall, handsome-looking young brother. All the women was gathered around. I taking their pictures, man. They loved it, man. That meant that he had 20-something new campaign headquarters at the grassroots level, because, you know, the Elks are truly at the grassroots level, right? This is how we did it. And a lot of it was luck, but it was a persistence of that individual responsibility that the veterans took to make sure that this guy was elected. And that's how we did that campaign, man. And like I say, we brought him from 6 points behind. Now, however folks want to look at it or whatever they want to say about it, fine. You know, it's a done deal now.
But you were down in the foxhole.
Hey, absolutely. We brought the grassroots together and gave them a belief. First of all, you had to believe you could win, you know. But then when you talk to veterans about individual responsibility, you know, and working as a team, because see, most folks, when you talk to, well, man, can we get organized? What about this area? And no, man, look, there's over 100 of us on this phone call here. Each of us must utilize individual responsibility and take responsibility for organizing in our church, in our community, in our fraternity, whatever units or groups we belong to. We've got to go on and do it, because this is our shot. And we're talking about 5 weeks, man. Let's hit it. And that's what we did, man. Hey, and look, he came back and was victorious. Okay. Now that's what we did. Now, whether they want to give us credit for that or not, that's up to them.
You were in the legislature with Clarence Mitchell III, if I'm not mistaken.
The third and the fourth.
So, and I'm talking about the third, the bear.
Yeah.
He was like a father figure to me.
He was bad. Clarence
Love that dude,
bad.
man.
Hey.
So he told me once, he said the 11 of them, that's when the Maryland Black Legislative Caucus, the Legislative Black Caucus were 11 members. He said the 11, this is, you know, he's been gone some time, so there's no reflection on our current Black Caucus, but he said the 11 of them accomplished so much more than the caucus from years later. Today, the Maryland Black or Legislative Black Caucus, to my understanding, is the largest in the nation.
Oh, absolutely.
Are we using our political position, our political accomplishments, our political stature to help empower Black people like those 11 members did back in the days of the bear?
Look, let me put it to you this way. First of all, I have never been so impressed with a group of people as I am with these younger people. Almost all of them got JDs, man. You know, this is the best educated group of legislators anywhere, man. I am so impressed with these people. And they are committed to our struggle. I'm not sure whether they really feel the awesome power that's in their hands. I'm not certain about that. But I can say this. They work well together. They may see things somewhat differently than I do. Let me give you an example of what I mean by that. I thought the settlement for the historically Black colleges and university, I thought that was a pittance. I think we got somewhere less than $600 million on that, okay? I thought it was peanuts In Mississippi, the poorest state in the union, they gave up nearly $800 million, for the black schools. So in a state like Maryland, the richest in the country, I would have expected more. Okay. But be that as it may, that's just a question of one's perspective. They got the job done. I just don't think they got enough out of it. And I think they had the numbers to get something out of it. I said something to one of the young legislators. I say, look, with our numbers, we got the muscle to get whatever we want out of this thing. Oh, well, you got to understand the process. You talk to me about understanding the goddamn process. I was part of that damn process for 24 years. I know what the process is, and the process is, can you get enough votes? And look, we've got enough votes because you got black folks elected all over Montgomery County, everywhere in the state, man, Western Maryland, Eastern Shore. You got enough black people to get anything done you want to get done.
I like baseball. I got to throw you a curveball. I got to get your thoughts. And welcome, if you're tuning in, we're talking to the one and only Professor, former delegate, Clarence Tiger Davis, Dunbar poet, in the 41st District. You remember when Lisa Gladden took them dump trucks up Edmondson Avenue and spanked Barbara Hoffman's butt. She was then succeeded by Senator Joe Carter. And I believe Hoffman got it from Clarence Blount. There was a vote once Joe Carter was appointed to a board by the governor, Wes Moore, which left that 41st District State Senator seat open. BeMoreNews.com, my outlet, we reported about the two black women who voted for the Jewish lady and not the black man, Malcolm Ruff, to be the next senator. Those two black women then entered their names in for the delegate replacement, leading many to suspect they supported the Jewish woman because they wanted the seat themselves. Sean Stinnett, by the way, got the delegate seat. How do you play Monday morning quarterback on that scenario where we gave away our political power?
Listen, I think you've stated it quite accurately. You don't give up no Senate seat. There's a limited number of senators, and you need to control as many Senate seats as you possibly can. And Malcolm Ruff should be in that Senate seat right now. And it has nothing to do with race. It has everything to do with our mission. As black elected officials, our mission is to acquire power, so that our communities can access that power base. To do anything else is contrary to the interests of black people. And it's really a sellout. Now, I don't know no other way to say it. It's just completely a sellout. For somebody to get a House of Delegates seat, you're going to give up the Senate seat? Come on. It's a shame. All of those people who did not support Malcolm Ruff need to be defeated come next election. It's just that simple. If you don't punish them for the things that they do that's contrary to our interests, then that's on us. But they need to be punished. Any and all of them that did not support Malcolm Ruff need to feel our whip, okay?
I want to ask you about my daddy. When I went to Dunbar, transferred from Poly there, my daddy would tell me about Dewbergs, the shower attendant. And I've since learned about Bob Douglas. He was East Baltimore, right?
Yes, sir.
About the what was it? What's the name of the Democratic Club? East Side?
Yeah, EDO.
EDO, East Side Democratic Organization.
Yes, sir.
Nathan Irby. And a lot of us don't know that Black history in Baltimore started in East Baltimore.
Yeah, but that was another one got by the name, and I don't know why you're too young to remember Paul Cockrell. He had a group called the Civic, the Associated Civic ACDC, Associated Civic Democratic Club, ACDC, right? He was really the first all-black organization. Bob Dalton come out of that. Old man Joe Chester, Clarence Blount, all of them came out of Paul Cockrell's organization, but then the white boys started picking them off. The white boys picked off Joe Chester, and he went over with Mount Royal. They picked off, Clarence Blount ended up in West Baltimore, but all of them started with that ACDC, Associated Civic Democratic Club of Paul Cockrell. Paul Cockrell was a colonel in the military, he was an attorney, but he was really the builder. Now, Dew Burns was diametrically opposed to him, okay, because Dew had come up and working with the old Bohemians and D'Alessandro, Italian boys, and all of that, and Dew saw things somewhat differently, but he had come up through those ranks. But you got this black group now, ACDC, because in 1966, Bob Dalton ran for the Senate. We took a group of students out of Morgan to go over there. And man, I've always told Bob Dalton, hey, man, you owe me a pair of shoes, because we wore out our shoes, knocking on doors for him that summer because he was black. I remember I had words with old man Chester, because he told us to get out of here with all this all black ticket. This ain't what we're about. I said, whoa, wait a minute, Mr. Chester. And I said some things I should not have said to Mr. Chester, because Mr. Chester was a man. But for him to pounce on us because we were supporting all black ticket, it didn't make much sense. So what happened was, and to show you how this kind of like materialized, the next year, 1967, I was listed to run for the city council of Baltimore, right? But I dropped out to support an all-black ticket because one day I sent you a clipping from that, man. The Sun papers ate me up with that editorial, right?
So look here, let me shift gears for a minute.
Yeah.
When and this has to do with the significance of black media and our counter position to mainstream media. Fox News, Sinclair Broadcasting,
yes,
pushed this initiative in Baltimore calling for term limits. What do you think when some people who don't live in Baltimore City call for term limits, which will impact more so our community in a negative way than the other community, especially when you think back to how hard it was to get the first black citywide official, if I'm not mistaken, it was Judge Joe Howard. You mentioned Larry Gibson. But as hard and as hard as the fight and as long as the fight it was to get to where we are, how in the world do we support term limits?
Well, we don't. They're coming up with any and all measures they can find to disrupt the growth of black political power. Okay. And political power means longevity on some folks' part. We can determine who need to go, who need to stay, who should stay, right? But that's just the way they operate to disrupt us.
Tell me about Marion Barry.
Marion Barry was probably one of the greatest assets that Black people had in this country. Marion Barry, when he got to office, he instituted an MBE program whereby Black folks were guaranteed to get a piece of the pie. It was called a point preference system, whereby there's 10 points, and you can get X number of points if you had a minority as part of your group or what have you. And Marion Barry, they call it a point preference system. And Marion Barry made a huge number of Blacks millionaires coming out of D.C. Many of them moved into Prince George's County. In fact,
he outbuilt Prince George's because of that wealth.
And one of the groups headed by this guy named Jones wanted a casino. You know, they had two all Black groups that was trying to get casinos. Okay, but somehow Bobby Ehrlich, when he was governor,
I was just gonna get to that.
Hey, when Bobby Ehrlich was governor, we could have gotten.
So let me just lay the groundwork.
Black ownership.
Let me just lay the groundwork. This is a 2-1 Democratic state. That Baltimore is a 9-1 Democratic city. What you and I know is that nobody wins the state of Maryland unless you win Baltimore, Greater Baltimore, including Liberty Road, Northwest Baltimore County, and gorgeous Prince George's County. In 2002, we saw the first Black statewide elected official, Michael Steele, take office.
Well,
what did that do? What did that change of thinking? Because we are more married to the Democratic Party than to our own churches.
Yeah. Look, let me be straight up, and I ain't gonna beat around the bush on this. Bobby Ehrlich, in my 24 years in the state legislature, right? Bobby Ehrlich was the best governor ever for Black people. Okay. All you have to do is to look at the dollar amount that MBEs received during his administration. I mean, the dollar amount was off the chart compared to what Black businesses received on the Democratic administration. Look at what he did for Carver, the money he put into Carver. Look at the money he put into Coppin.
Now it goes from Coppin down to Baker Street.
Yeah, look at that. Look at what Bobby Ehrlich did, man. Now, because Bobby Ehrlich was one of the guys like this, you know, I'll never forget. They had the kid had 5 bombs. This house over with the Dawson family, you know, over there on Eden and Preston, right?
Oh, yeah.
And we had a rally there. Bobby Ehrlich was sitting next to me. And he said, Tiger, look, we cannot, the government cannot bring us out of this thing here. You know, what we have to do is to build the Black economy. Black businesses must rise up. Bobby Ehrlich was committed to that. Now, that's what we said we were committed to. Bobby Ehrlich, the Republican governor, was more committed to building Black businesses than Black folks were. Now, you put that one in your pipe and smoke it because Bobby Ehrlich believed in economic development and believed that that was the way to go. And he also believed that the educational institutions were key. And so he put that money in the Coppin, man.
I just talked to Dr. Burnett today, and I thank God that Dr. Burnett got a chance to witness that empowerment.
Yeah. I mean, look at Coppin, man. Coppin was nothing, man. And look at all the new buildings and stuff. And then not only the new buildings, but Coppin was created as a catalyst for building the entire damn community. I mean, communities all around Coppin rose up, man. that's Bobby Ehrlich, man. I'm telling you. See, if when a Republican is there, if you work with that Republican, you can make astronomical gains.
What is it
Now,
that
I'm
the
not talking
Democrats?
about that crazy Trump thing over there, okay?
What
But
is
I'm
it that?
talking about at the governor's level.
Is it that Democrats feel like they don't have to do anything to keep the black vote, where Republicans in Maryland know that they've got to show that they will do something if they want to stay in office? They've got to work for the black vote. Is it that the Maryland Democratic Party doesn't feel it needs to do anything to get black people to vote Democrat?
I don't know whether I would say it that way, okay? But what I will say is this. It's time that black folk got a little respect for their votes, okay? And the only way you get that respect is to show them that you got some alternatives. Let me talk about Hogan for a minute. Now, Hogan did a lot of things I didn't agree with, like on the red line and some other transportation issues.
I thought O'Malley could have left that project shovel ready. Was that correct?
That's true. But
okay.
Let me finish on Hogan. Hogan, well, let me tell you how it went down. I get a call the night that Hogan is elected, and Atkins, the adjutant general of the state of Maryland, right, said, "Look, Tiger, it's time for Linda. She's ready." I said, "Ready for what?" She said, "Look, I'm getting ready to step down, and I need your help to get some Republicans to support Linda Singh getting the job as head of the Maryland Military Department." Now, Linda Singh, we had always been looking for one of the brothers.
This is the brigadier general, though, right?
Yeah. But we was looking for Ed Ballard, right? But Linda Singh come out of nowhere. And what happened is I called up a few Republicans that I knew, and they all agreed, and they helped promote Linda Singh to be the first African American. But now she's not only the first African American to be head of the military department of Maryland, she's the first female in the country to head it. But now look at what has happened. She put a couple people in the pipeline, and one of them was Janine Burkhead, who is now the what? Head of the Maryland Military Department, right? She's the adjutant general. So here we are, got our second black female to head the Maryland National Guard. Now, why is that so important? It is important who controls the National Guard, because the National Guard is the first line for disaster control, first line of defense, if there's a riot or what. Now, whomever control that National Guard is important to us, okay? And so to have Janine Burkhead, little girl out of Hampton University, little pirate, right? And she's good. And those ladies, they didn't get there because they were female. If anything, they were slowed down in the progress because they was female. They got there because they earned it.
Okay, so look, I want to end this discussion off, and I thank you for taking time to come and discuss some of our history, some of our glorious, magnanimous history. But I told you I love baseball now. Big ups to James Mosier, one of the oldest black little leagues in the country. But here comes the knuckleball. What do you think of the Kendrick Lamar Super Bowl performance?
The who?
The Super Bowl performer, the halftime show, is a young man named Kendrick Lamar.
I was asleep. Hey, look. That was family day at my church, man. And I had been out on that night, the previous night, for a 95th birthday party for this great lady up in Harford County. One of them that I talked about who was on that front line, with them African diplomats, breaking down the discrimination and stuff. I was at her birthday party. She turned 95 on the 8th. And then on the 9th, I had to come back home and then go to church all day. By the time Super Bowl hit, man, I was asleep. I
All right,
missed most of it.
well, let's end it off this way. Tell me one of your favorite people in Black history.
Well, I guess you have to say somebody like Paul Robeson. Paul Robeson, because look, he gave up so much to fight for the cause. Look, Paul Robeson could have been a multi-millionaire, right? But he gave it all up because he stood for that which was right, and he stood for people. And the one thing about him is that on the 100th anniversary of his birth, the whole world's paused for a moment. The UN in Russia, China, England, Wales, everywhere, the whole world stopped to pay tribute and homage to Paul Robeson. That's how great he was. Now, the shame of it is that nobody did a damn thing back here because the white man back here had not validated him. And that, for me, tells the whole story of why we cannot move forward with telling our story. That's why we cannot move forward as a people. Because if we cannot give Paul Robeson the respect that he should have when the rest of the world does. Because remember when the people were starving in Wales and the miners were striking in England or what have you, right? Paul Robeson did a concert. Paul Robeson fed the protesters or what have you, okay? And so they respect him there. In China, they revered him. In Russia, they revered him. All over the world, Paul Robeson was revered everywhere but here. And that's a shame. You ask any of our people who Paul Robeson was, most folks never even heard of Paul Robeson, man.
Robeson. He was an actor. He played Othello. He was an opera singer.
But more than anything, he was a freedom fighter. And the whole world knew it. The whole world knew him as a freedom fighter, okay? And he stood up for people all over the world, and the entire world.
He did a protest in Baltimore.
Check it out. The 100th anniversary of his birth, 1898. Okay? The whole world came together to pay homage to Paul Robeson. Why not here in his own country?
Didn't he do a protest in Baltimore? Wasn't he caught picketing here?
Well, he picketed everywhere. But more than anything else, when they asked him, are you now, or have you ever been a member of the Communist Party? He said, that's my damn business. He refused to answer them silly ass questions that they would ask. And so the House Un-American Activities Committee, they banned him, whereby he couldn't go outside the country. They took his passport. So what did they do? They backed the truck up to the Canadian border and then set up a microphone system on the other side of the Canadian border, and he sang to the world from inside the United States, okay? Because that's
across the Niagara River?
Well, yeah, it was near Niagara, but it was the Canadian border because he couldn't leave the country. So they had a concert with him at the border singing to the. You got to check him out, man. Look, he was not only one of the greatest singers, he was valedictorian. He probably was about 16 when he graduated. Walter Camp declared him a veritable Superman. Okay.
Oh, he played football too.
Oh yeah, not only that. Look, man, the guy look, check him out. He got 16 varsity letters, man. How did you get 16 varsity letters in a 4-year career in college?
It's only 3 seasons.
They had this boy running all over the goddamn place, whether it was track and field, football, you name it, he was doing it. 16 letters, man, okay? But not only that, he was Phi Beta Kappa. He was the head of his class. He was singing every goddamn where. And I think he graduated. He was about 16 years of age when he graduated. Hey, look, they say when he did Othello in England, he was such a magnificent figure that when the white women saw him, they passed out. Oh, they swooned, man. Read it, baby. Look, folks got to read about this guy, man. He was great. But now here's the thing. His wife may have been smarter than him. He married this woman who was a genius in chemistry, man. But she gave up her career to support him. Okay? Check it out. Okay.
I love you, Tiger Davis. Thank you for this history. And God bless you and yours. Thank you for being in my life. Okay.
All right, my brother. God bless and you take care. And I'm gonna get to a couple other phone calls.
Yes, sir.
Take care now.
Yes, sir. We hope that you have learned something. I certainly have. Black history is every day. My name's Donnie Glover. Good afternoon, world.